This video goes over the course requirements for Philosophy 101, Introduction to Philosophy. First, I'd like to welcome you all to Philosophy 101. I'm excited to have you in class. Thank you very much for taking this class. So, the description of this course. This course introduces students to some of the big ideas from the history of Western philosophy. Now, this course has 6 outcomes. The first is to understand and discuss major philosophical problems in the Western tradition. The second course outcome is to assess arguments and perspectives, philosophical and otherwise, using critical reasoning. The third outcome is to express complex thought logically and coherently. The fourth is to apply knowledge of philosophical perspectives, logic, and critical reasoning to develop students' own opinions regarding philosophical problems and issues. The fifth objective is to critically analyze values and ethics within a range of human experience and expression to engage more fully in local and global issues. And finally, to recognize the value that the tools of philosophy can have in everyday life and to be able to express this value to others. So, these are some of the things you can expect to get out of this course. Now, the course text. There isn't really a course text. The texts we're going to look at come from a variety of places, and all of the readings for this course will be posted on our course Canvas page. With the exception of the readings for week 1, which are pretty long, most of the other readings are going to be very short, usually only a page or two, and sometimes only 1 page. So, don't be scared off by the first week's readings. In general, the reading for this class is very short, although usually pretty dense and pretty complex. Now, my communication policy. Certainly you can contact me anytime through Canvas message. It's usually a pretty good way to contact me. You can also send me an email at nnash, so Nick Nash, my last name, at bluecc.edu. And if you would like, I'm also available for face-to-face Zoom meetings as needed. Just reach out to me and let me know that you would like to do that, and I'm happy to set something up. My schedule is pretty flexible. I'm available quite often, so let me know if that's something that would be valuable to you. And I'll usually respond to a message, whether it's an email or a Canvas message, within 24 hours. Sometimes a little bit slower on Saturdays. I don't always check Canvas or my email on Saturdays. Of the two, email is usually faster because I sit in front of my email all day, most every day. However, I do check Canvas intermittently throughout the day, so I will certainly see your messages there and try to respond within 24 hours. Usually much faster. Okay, now I'm going to go over the requirements for this course, and then I'm going to talk about each of them in a little bit more depth. So this course has 5 elements. The first is weekly coursework, which is worth 20% of your grade. The second part is going to be your discussion board responses. There's going to be 2 discussion boards each week. One is going to be in text and one is going to be in video. Then your first paper is going to be worth 20%, and a midterm exam will be also worth 20%, and then a second or final paper. Okay? And I will talk about each of these a little bit more in depth. So for the weekly coursework, there will usually be 2 weekly assignments, and each weekly assignment involves a reading and watching some number of videos that help explain and expand on that reading. So this is followed by a series of questions that invite you to work through various aspects of the arguments that each of the philosophers that we're looking at is presenting. All right, so it's fairly straightforward. You just read the text, watch the video, and answer the questions. And then I give you feedback based on your answers. And the idea behind a lot of this is to get you to dig into the material and try to start developing your own views on it and thinking about it and writing about it coherently. Okay? All right. The next element is discussion boards. And there's going to be 1 weekly text discussion board post, which also involves 2 replies. So here, half of your grade on this assignment is in your post, your initial post, And then a quarter of your remaining grade is in each of your replies. So, for example, if you only make your initial post, then you'll only get half the points. If you only make one post and one reply, you only get 75% of the points. To get the full amount of points, you need one post and two replies. Now, there will also be a weekly video discussion board and one weekly reply. Because video is a little bit more complicated, I only need one reply rather than two. But this is something that I hope will bring us together a little bit and allow us to see each other a little bit more as people. And I hope that it's fun. The video discussion boards are usually going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit more straightforward, and we'll see how that goes this week and just sort of proceed accordingly. Okay? All right. So my grading policy for the weekly coursework and the discussion boards, I grade these on what I call an 8, 9, 10 scale. So how this works is that as long as you give a reasonable attempt at completing the assignment, the minimum grade that you'll receive is 80% of the available points. Okay? And I grade this way because I don't want you to be afraid that your grade's going to suffer if you don't know how to answer a question, because a lot of these questions we're going to be considering are pretty complicated and they may seem very confusing. And I just want you to give it your best shot. Okay? And I also want you to feel comfortable trying to push boundaries and try to do things that maybe you don't feel so good at, and to just recognize that even if you fail fantastically, the worst that you can possibly do is get 80%. And most of the time, to be honest, I usually give either 90s or 100. So, it gives you the opportunity to try out these assignments with very little risk. Okay. Now, my late policy for these two parts of the class. I set due dates for each assignment to mimic an in-person course that meets twice a week. So what this is going to mean is that half of the due dates for our assignments are due on Tuesdays, and the other half are due on Thursdays. And again, this is set this way to mimic an in-person class. However, my intention behind this is to encourage you to spread out the work throughout the week. But I don't enforce any kind of late penalty. Okay? So I set the due dates on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so technically, if you turn something in that's due on Tuesday and Wednesday, of course it's late, but I don't enforce any kind of late policy with this. Instead, what I do is each week's assignment closes on the Monday morning after it's posted at 8 a.m. Okay? And at this point, they're no longer accessible. So you can turn the assignments in any time during the week that I post them. And as long as you get them in, there is no late penalty. However, if you don't have them in by 8 a.m. on the Monday after I post them, the assignments are no longer accessible to submit them. Okay? Now, if you need any extra time to complete a week's assignments for any reason, all you have to do is let me know before they're due. So I say here Sunday at midnight, but actually what I mean is by Monday morning at 8 a.m. So as long as you tell me by Monday morning at 8 a.m. that you need a little bit of extra time, I'm happy to give it to you for any reason. And to be clear, I don't need to know the reason. All you have to do is tell me that you need a little bit of extra time, and that's totally fine. I'll be happy to give it to you. However, if you contact me after the assignment is due, I won't give you an extension. Okay? So I have a very forgiving system before the due date, and after the due date, I'm not forgiving at all. So just contact me if you need a little bit of extra time. No big deal. Happy to give it to you, but make sure that you contact me before the due date. Okay. Now, the other assignments for the class, the first paper and the final paper. These are Flossy papers that'll be about 3 to 5 pages long. They're going to involve clearly presenting an argument that we've covered in class, presenting an objection to this argument, a response to this objection, and a reply to this response. This may seem overwhelming right now, but don't worry. I will have plenty of explanation about exactly how to do this, and paper prompts will be provided, but you're also allowed to consider any argument that we've looked at in class. If the paper prompt doesn't include that, just get my approval first if it's not one of the paper prompts. Okay, the remaining assignment is the midterm exam. And this midterm is going to be a sort of take-home style exam we might think of, which just means in this case that you'll have the questions beforehand and you'll have as much time to work on it as you want. There's going to be no surprises. You'll have access to the questions for the whole week that the exam is due, and you can take as much time as you'd like to complete the exam. And it's going to be basically sort of short essay style. So answers that are probably 2 to 3 paragraphs or so. We'll kind of see how it goes when we get there. Okay. Now, I have a slightly different late policy on papers and exams than I do on the regular weekly work and the discussion boards. So on papers and exams, any of these assignments that you turn in late will receive a 5% penalty for each day that they're late, up to 25%. Okay? So after 25% or 5 days, you'll no longer lose points, right? So basically you have 5 days after the initial due date to turn it in. After that point, you've lost a quarter of the points, but then after 5 days, you don't lose anymore. So you only ever lose 25%, which is a pretty big loss, honestly. But the purpose of this policy is to encourage you to turn in your work on time, right? That's why my late policy is so aggressive, 5% a day. But this also means that there's a reason to turn in your assignment no matter how late they are, okay? So I want you to, if things go terribly wrong and you have to turn something in late, I want there to still be a good reason for you to turn it in, okay? But look, my preference by a lot is just to turn things in on time. I think a mistake a lot of students make is that they turn things in late. And in almost every case, even if you're just like smashing it out at the last minute, it's almost always going to turn out better if you just turn it in on time. Okay? But look, just like in my other extension policy, if you need an extension for any reason, just ask me before the due date, and I'm happy to give it to you. Let's have a great class, and I enjoy getting to know all of you and working with you.